Hello and welcome back to another episode of How to Startup with your host. I am Rowan Sinclair and today I am joined by Ed Meacock. Hi Ed, how you doing, man?
Hey, Rowan. Yeah, really good, thanks.
Excellent, good to
How are
see you,
you?
mate. Thank you for jumping on the show. I'm good. So for everyone who isn't aware, Ed is the CEO and founder of Tunable, which is an indie music stock market, essentially. Would you call that, or have you got a different definition for it?
I would call it anything you like, to be honest. I've gone through so many different changes of this name or of the idea, or trying to define it has been a big part of the challenge. But yeah, combining elements, so it's a platform combining elements of a stock market, so variable prices and sort of the ability for someone to invest in music. And then, yeah, it's a mashup of a lot of existing things. But I think indie music stock market captures it pretty well.
Excellent. That's good to know. Okay, so before we go into Tunable, I just wanted to touch a little bit into your background because obviously I know you haven't had I mean, anyone who's interested in music doesn't necessarily have to have a background in music, but I know you studied at Durham, 2-1 in modern languages, but the majority of your background primarily comes around sailing, does it not?
Yeah. I studied languages just actually for lack of knowing what else to study. I mean, I initially was thinking I would study economics because I kind of wanted to go into business. That was about as specific as I could get when I was at the age of making those like educational decisions. And it was actually a family friend who suggested that I study languages purely because the degree for me was like a means to an end. It was it's a bit of a status thing in a strange way, less than being purely educational, or a safety net at the very least. And this family friend suggested that I do languages because he said you get a year abroad, and that it was he said that was a lot of fun and it's useful knowing languages. And I'm pretty glad I did because I think economics would have been pretty dry, and it's a bit of a dark art as far as I can tell anyway. So I'm not sure how much use a lot of the learning would have been. And then after that, I ended up falling into sailing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just was fairly sure that I didn't want to work in an office, at least initially. And yeah, I stumbled into sailing. Was a sea scout as a kid, and yeah, got some qualifications that enabled me to start working on yachts.
Awesome. I didn't know that sea scouting was a thing. That's quite new to me.
Oh yeah, the 8th Norwich Sea Scout Troop, the largest in Europe, I believe.
Cool, man. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I imagine I probably would have been fully aware of it had I lived close to the sea, but obviously being in a relatively landlocked area of the world, I was not. There's good old
Absolutely.
beavers and scouts back in the day. God, that was a very long time ago. And it's funny you say that. I think the reason that you went into chartered yachting or sailing in the first place because you didn't want to work in an office initially.
Yeah, more or less. I There were a few things that I knew that I wanted to do. One of them was skiing. I just loved to ski as soon as I learned to ski, and so as soon as I found out that doing a ski season was a thing that you could do, I knew that that was something I wanted to do. So I did that, and then essentially my parents they suggested I go to university first. They said, okay, ski season, great. University first, then let's do the ski season. Which I understand the logic of that because in retrospect, God knows what would have happened. I mean, I probably wouldn't have gone to university, but whether that would have been a good or a bad thing, it's not for me to say. Um, so yeah, that was the route there,
No, that's interesting
really.
because I think there's always that fear that you end up doing what you want to do and then you never go back and finish your degree. And I think because I think from what I saw, you graduated in 2011, same as me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I saw.
yeah. Did you have a little browse? Yeah, it's
Yeah, so am I right in saying you went to Exeter, which I feel is a similar sort of vibe, sort of the Durham of the south, Durham the Exeter of the north, opposite ends of the country,
Yeah, very much so.
similar
Very much so. I
universities
never went up to
probably.
Durham actually. I would have loved to have seen the campus. The Exeter one was beautiful from what I remember of it. But it was it's interesting. I know that back in those days. I think now we've moved on a few. I mean, those that graduated more in the 2015, 2016 era, I think a lot of kids of that era who are considering to go to university are now obviously making more of a decision as to whether it's really worth it and whether university education really means as much as it used to. I mean, do you feel that it's changed a little bit? Do you feel like, okay, actually, honest question, do you feel like you've benefited much from actually going to university?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that I've thought a lot about. I think fundamentally it's impossible to answer these kinds of things because you never know what the universe would have thrown at you in the other case. I mean, I think that there are more efficient ways to learn, that's for sure. I think that I wasted a lot of my time at university. Spent a lot of my time drinking and in front of computer screens that weren't particularly productive. But yeah, I mean, but it was really good fun. It was a different kind of education. I mean, I valued it more more of a social education, although I did spend a lot of my time blackout drunk. So that's not a great social education in a lot of respects. But yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, whether I would go now with the tuition fees as they are, I think in retrospect, I probably wouldn't. I think I would probably I think it's good to spend 3 years of doing something that's not just like a 9 to 5 purely designed just for bringing in cash. You can do 3 years of learning of some kind, but that could involve traveling. It could involve a mixture of travel and work, or even like apprenticeships. I think are just hugely undervalued.
Yes, I was literally about to touch upon those myself. I think apprenticeships are they certainly weren't as big when we were obviously deciding to go to university. I think they've become a little bit more important since. Obviously, they're massive in Germany, aren't they? You have
Right.
Yeah, which is interesting.
I wasn't aware of that.
When I used to work for a startup called Frog Bikes, which is a children's bicycle manufacturer, and from what I understand, obviously in the UK you can become a bike technician. Just whimsically almost, you can go and get a job at a bike shop repairing bicycles, just learning. You go and get your first job and then you stay there for a few years and then, you just pick it up. In Germany, you actually have to study it in a real specialist manner. You do an apprenticeship and then you actually become I suppose, almost like a doctor of bicycle mechanics, which is absolute madness. So you have to,
intense, I imagine.
yeah, very, very intense. So I think they've got education rights. They've also got coronavirus right so far. But they
get a lot of stuff right. To be honest, I think
So yeah, the apprenticeship option. I think I think similarly to you, if I could go back, which is theoretically and well, realistically impossible, I would probably have chosen to do something slightly different. Simply because, as you said, spending 6 out of 7 nights a week blackout drunk probably isn't most conducive to having a happy mental health or to your future prospects.
Yeah, I'm purely just because you don't remember. Didn't remember a whole lot of it, which is not that useful.
No, but it is what it is.
Fun. But then, in terms of like friends that have been made, and all that sort of stuff is priceless, really, and irreplaceable.
No, without a doubt.
So yeah, I wouldn't change a thing in that respect.
No, exactly. So obviously you've done. So your whole background has primarily been based around yachting from a professional point of view and sailing. But obviously you've had there's essentially 3 businesses you've been involved with so far. So I know I think the main one we want to talk about today is Tunable, which is what I started the introduction with. But obviously there's been Simply Pure. You're currently working on solar cruising as well. So if we could just get a tiny bit of background on Simply Pure.
Okay, so Simply Pure was born out of the seasonal nature of my yachting work. So what I usually do is, or in Europe, the summer season is big. So you go to the Mediterranean, south of France, Greece, wherever the big yachting centers are. And then you can get seasonal work ending anywhere from September to November. And then you tend to go across the Atlantic to the Caribbean or to anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere for their summer. Now, I think it was the first or second winter after I'd started boating. So I'd just finished the summer season and I was sort of in this period it was generally quite a panicky period of work out what you're going to do. Are you going to get a crossing and go find the sun for the winter and do some boating, or are you going to like? I was looking at internships in London for not big corporate internships, but sort of startup internships. I was looking at all sorts of things. And one night over dinner, I think it was over dinner, I overheard my dad talking about wanting to start. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something that piqued my attention. And it transpired that they wanted to get an additional income stream, and they were looking at starting an Amazon FBA business, Amazon fulfillment business. So kind of drop shipping. Well, that was his idea. It was drop shipping. So okay, buying from a white label provider, sticking your own brand on it, putting markup on it, and then you not really having to do the work, essentially. Well, it seemed a little to me like money for nothing in some respects, which, is possible to have businesses like those. But in this particular case, the market that he wanted to go into, which he had chosen through various criteria, which was a very good choice, was dietary supplements. And in that particular case, is quite a saturated market, just because there are a lot of brands out there, and I guess lots of different people have cottoned on to the whole Amazon FBA sort of paradigm. So we did that. We found a company that we could buy white label goods off, rebrand them, and sell them on. I mean, they were also selling the stuff that we were buying. They were selling on Amazon under their own brand. So it seemed like there was a limit, I guess, to the scope of that business. And so one day I had a bet with my dad. I really wanted to sell some things that this white label provider they didn't have in their inventory. So we were selling things like vitamin D3, various different vitamin and mineral complexes. I kind of always been a bit of a hippie, and I like the natural organic angle and everything. So at the time, I was really into, well, I still am, but I was really into turmeric. And I thought I could see the future. I thought the future for turmeric was quite a bright one. And there weren't many people selling that on Amazon, maybe 2 or 3 brands. But there was no way that we could buy these, because often things are either compressed into tablets or they're put into capsules. But there was no way we could buy these capsules. So I actually ended up having a bet with my dad that it would be a good seller. I ended up buying the powder off Amazon, like in bulk, buying little capsule makers, like a handmade one, and making up bottles of the stuff, and then selling it. And that eventually became our business model. We ended up doing just natural, well, like predominantly natural and organic supplements, but doing the manufacturing ourselves. So that whole thing sort of changed, and that started off one winter, and then
let's just quickly dig into the whole manufacturing aspect. Yeah. So you were actually getting in the pills and just going for the scoop and dip option.
The scoopy scoop. Yeah, I mean, since then, I guess initially in the very first stages, it's that all this stuff is actually regulated it's not regulated as pharmaceuticals. They're regulated as food, because it is essentially food. I mean, we sell ginger, we sell turmeric, we sell all sorts of other things. So yeah, initially it was a cottage business, I guess. And yeah, it was pretty painstaking.
Yeah, I can imagine. How long would it take you? So how many on average would you have to fill up per box? Because it sounds like an extensive task.
We do bottles of 90, and this little contraption that I bought off Amazon, I think initially would do 24 capsules. So you'd have to buy the capsules empty, and they come put together. So you have to take them apart, like put them all into this little machine, measure out all the right amounts, put that in, tamp it down, do that a few times over. So yeah, I mean that's not such a viable business, but once it's scaled up, then it is more so.
No, for sure. I mean, it's fantastic that you went ahead and did that. You have to go put in the legwork before really reaping the rewards, I guess. And were you able to then scale it up to a level where you could have them industrially produced?
So it is. We still produce them on site, but we have more equipment, and we have a production room, and we have everything that's set up properly. I mean, that would be the next step, really, and that's something I've been contemplating is when I sold out my shares in the company, because it was a family affair. I thought that it should have been worth more. I thought my shares were worth more. My dad didn't agree with me, and so the idea was that I would sell out my shares, but then I'd be able to buy them back at any time for the same amount, which sort of means that if they were undervalued when you sold them out, then they're undervalued when you buy back in. So that sort of negates any valuation issue.
Indeed.
So I've been contemplating, sort of buying them back and growing the business, because it could be, at the moment we don't do any wholesale. It's all retail. So if it really could step up a notch, because it's a very attractive brand. I think if I say so myself, we have we have good looking branding. We have a range that's quite unusual. It's quite a niche market, or it's quite a good sector, pushing the whole organic, natural aspect to it. So I mean, we could foreseeably sell to companies like, well, to any retailers really. Obviously, then that messes up your margins change a lot, and then your production changes a lot. And at the moment, we're set up, I guess, to produce smaller amounts.
Indeed.
So the whole process would change.
Yeah,
And
naturally, you'd have to scale up considerably to be able to start supplying wholesale to maintain the
Yeah,
scale revenues you're
exactly.
doing now. Yeah, of course. So obviously, if you do end up doing that, then I'll definitely have you back on, and we'll have to do this again. But
Yeah.
in terms of obviously how you were valuing your shares, I think that's something that I think a few people have asked so far is how you ended up coming up with the valuation of your shares. Obviously, you said that there was some discrepancy there in terms of the overall valuation that you and your father had put on it. So how did you go about actually ascertaining what the company was worth, and then therefore how your shares were calculated to be?
That is a pretty good question. I mean, I was essentially presented with a few different options, that were retaining different amounts of equity and being given different sort of lump sums. So it was more or less a fait accompli. It wasn't so much of a negotiation. And I honestly don't know what they were based on. I mean, my interpretation of what things can be based on, I guess, at a very basic level, really is revenue times by a certain number of years, 4 or 5 years or something. But then you've got to take into account assets and all sorts of things. And it was particularly complex because nothing was ever set out in stone from the beginning, because it was dealing with family. And yeah, I'm still not sure how I feel about working with family. I feel like I'm very inclined not to have things in black and white and set out in stone. But at the same time, when it comes to business, it's tricky, or tensions can run high very easily. I found that much.
Yeah, I can imagine. But let's swiftly move on to, obviously, from Simply Pure. I think you said that you'd sold your shares in order to fund Tunable, but
Yes.
this is what we were talking about before. But you also said that in order to finance Tunable, you'd started solo cruising, right?
Yeah, it's been a long, old, convoluted road.
That's cool. That's what we're here to uncover, mate.
Yeah. So the first time round, so I set up Simply Pure with my parents in the winter of, I think it was winter 2015. Yeah, it was. And then that summer, I'd always had it in my head that I was going to go back and work on the boats. I used to work for a company called Yacht Week, who do like flotilla holidays, partying on boats, essentially, which was a lot of fun. And the idea was I could also sort of combine pushing Tunable with that. So I'd said that I was going to go away and leave Simply Pure, leave the company, which then my parents said, okay, well, you'll need to sell out some of it. So I ended up doing a week's charter in Thailand. So I had some crew from a previous trip who I'd got to know really well, and they wanted to do another trip in Thailand. So I went out to Thailand in April, and I decided while I was out there, that was right, I went to persuade a friend of mine who's a developer, who I'd sort of talked with him about Tunable, and sort of I'd been working on him to get him in as a technical partner. So I went to Koh Tao in Thailand, where he was doing his dive masters, and I'd been there before, a couple of years before. It's where I'd learned to scuba dive, and I just decided that it'd be a good place to spend some time. And while I was out there, he basically, yeah, he just couldn't really be convinced. I think he was quite intimidated by the technical challenge. I mean, I'm not a coder. I mean, I have like knowledge of HTML and CSS, and I can build WordPress websites, and I can sort of understand things, and I get the logic behind it. But I've been too much of a pussy to actually write anything or try and write anything.
Also takes a lot of
But
dedication as well,
using,
doesn't it?
yeah, it does, and I think that's been the niggling thing. Is I've the thought in the back of my mind has always been I could spend hundreds of hours banging my head against a laptop trying to achieve what someone who's been doing it for quite some time and has a lot of aptitude in that area could achieve in a few hours.
Yeah.
And an efficiency freak, and so the idea of those wasted hours in some ways upset me. But the upshot is that we use a lot of stuff that's very difficult to code, but we take it for granted, and we see all this shiny stuff on the web, and we think, oh well, you should probably be able to knock that up in a few weeks. But then when you actually speak to the boots on the ground who are actually putting this stuff together, it's very it's tricky. I think it's got a lot. I think I get the impression it's got a lot easier with frameworks and different sort of modular approaches to building, but still no mean feat. So I couldn't convince my friend to come on as a CTO, and then I decided. Oh, he basically said we needed more resources because it's quite an intimidating sector. There are other people. Well, this is the music sector, so there are other players in that area. Obviously, you've got the likes of Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, loads of big players, and they're all like massive corporate teams. And then there's like little old me trying to do things. So that element's quite intimidating. And my friend just said, look, you need more resources. When you do something, get some more resources, then we might stand a chance to pull this thing off. And as a result of that, I decided that I should apply myself in the industry which I knew, which was sailing. And it had been a bit of a dream of mine to create. Well, I kind of wanted to create like the ultimate eco catamaran. So involving solar panels. So a solar powered hemp catamaran was the dream, really. And this is how it evolved. Because most boats up to a certain size are made of fiberglass, but you can replace the glass fibers with hemp fiber, and you can do some stuff with bioresin as well. But I don't think the technology is quite there yet. And that makes it lighter, just more environmentally friendly. You can make almost the whole thing out of hemp, and that just appeals to me on many levels. So I then decided that I should try and start a business around that. And it's quite a simple business in a lot of respects. It's just managing an asset. So it'd be a question of finding a buyer to buy a catamaran and then running it as a charter operation. But at the time, there was no one building solar-powered catamarans, but there were a few companies doing kind of retrofit kits. So I costed all of that up of buying an off-the-shelf one, having it retrofitted with this kit and everything. So that was sort of how it was born. And then I ended up actually working for a short period for an Austrian company who do build these solar-powered catamarans.
Was that Silent Yachts?
Yes, Silent Yachts. Yeah. So they used to be called Solar Wave, and then they changed their name to Silent Yachts. And I had actually stumbled across them when I was researching the whole solar-powered catamaran niche. But their website, I was so frankly unimpressed by it. I almost didn't give them another look. I just thought kind of, okay, who are these jokers? If they can't put together a website, it's unlikely they're going to be able to put together like some really advanced marine solar technology. So I don't know. I thought it was some sort of scam. It didn't quite add up. And then I think it was about 6 months later that I actually got in touch with them. I think I'd probably been backed into a bit of a corner in terms of like which direction I'm going in life. And yeah, I ended up working for them for a little bit. And they're going places. I mean, they are really, they're the Tesla of the sea in some ways. But their marketing was a bit of a mess.
But they are genuinely silent as well, aren't they? Because they're obviously they're electric. What is it that makes them silent? Because I know essentially it's a little bit like, whether or not there's a Toyota hybrid behind you. I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't even cross a
yeah,
zebra crossing anymore without
yeah,
looking.
yeah. It is quite freakish how quiet they are, actually. I mean, we did sea trials on their first one was a 64 footer, which they took to a few boat shows in the south of France. And yeah, you do the sea trials, and you'd have the bilge boards, the sort of floorboards in the boat up, and the motor would be right there, just feet away, and you just hear like a very light whirring, and just because there's no combustion motors.
Wow.
I mean, they have a big generator to charge up the batteries if if the weather isn't behaving, and if you want to do high speeds and stuff as well. But yeah, they are the future. That is the dream. So the dream now has changed. The dream is now tunable. Well, solo cruising. If I can find someone, I mean, that's just a question of finding someone with like $1.5 million to throw at a boat, which is a lot of cash. And then that business more or less is fairly easy to run.
So are you actively in the process of looking for investors for solo cruising? Is that just love to? I'll actively keep asking people on a casual basis when you're out when you're out skipping. So I'm not familiar with the terminology, skippering, and then hope to help that someone comes on board. So it's kind of there, just running in the background at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I went through different. That has been, well, my sort of inability to focus on one thing has been a bit of a theme, perhaps.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing not being able to focus, because yes and no. I suppose I think the extent to which you've actually taken a couple of these projects. I mean, obviously, simply put, Pure, you're still actively involved in solo cruising and tunable. You both set them up with the intention of taking them further, which is excellent. I mean, having a diversified mindset doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be solely singularly focused on one thing at any one time, because it stems creativity.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've basically spent quite a few. I've spent a lot of time lining up a lot of ducks, essentially, and the ducks I feel like they are now lined up.
They're almost hatched. They've almost hatched.
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay, and so obviously from there, and now obviously you've been focusing more on tunable since then. So now let's get into that a bit more. It is essentially a stock market for independent music artists, primarily based on the precedent that the majority of revenue from the likes of Spotify and other monthly subscriptions to music, probably Google as well, actually goes to a very small proportion of the overall artist. I think we were pulling up a few stats before, and it was 99.2% going to 1% back in 2016, admittedly, but I imagine it was probably back then where you were getting your inspiration.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not a pretty looking income distribution sort of pyramid. It's pretty top heavy.
Okay. So what is it? What else about? Well, tell me more about Tunable, man.
Yeah. Well, so it was born out of the days of when I was working on. I started off in this sort of seafaring world working on big motor yachts. So you'd start off as a deckhand in a crew of 14 or 15. And you spend essentially a glorified cleaner, like a very well paid glorified cleaner, but you spend a lot of time doing a lot of repetitive tasks, which gives you a lot of time to think. And at that time I still am really into like my house music, a lot of electronic music. I was using SoundCloud a lot to find new music. And I found that I would sort of game the SoundCloud system a little bit. So I would look at the SoundCloud feed, and instead of just clicking on every song and playing every song, I would look at the ratio between the number of reposts and the number of plays, or the ratio between the number of loves and the number of plays, which are two kind of handy metrics. It's almost like there was one level of like, which was clicking the like little heart button on SoundCloud, and then like a super like would be clicking the repost button, like you like it so much you want to repost it onto your profile. And I generally found that if the ratio between those metrics was low enough, so if you had quite a few reposts it's not a question of reposts per play, but if you didn't have lots of plays for each like or each repost, then the chances were it was going to be a good song. And I realized there was so much content out there on SoundCloud. There's just what I call it. This is the tyranny of choice. Really, there's just hours and hours uploaded every minute, I believe, to SoundCloud in terms of content, and it's not sorted. It's kind of like there's this library out there that's just been torn, may as well have been torn through by a hurricane, and you're just sort of wandering amongst this media, and there are opaque algorithms that sort of suggest you stuff, and like, you sort of, I find now, I like a lot of the stuff that's suggested to me, but I don't really know how or why it's suggested to me, and I feel that it's all rather opaque. So I thought there must be a way to distill the music and all of the content in SoundCloud and sort it better, index it, make it so it's searchable. I'm kind of obsessed by efficiency, and I like the idea of being able to drill down into a particular genre or a particular geographical location or a particular demographic and see what is big in those respects. So seeing what is popular in London or Jamaica or Barcelona or wherever. So this idea of sort of visualizing all of that data fascinates me. And that's where it's born out of. And then I started working on, okay, well, how do you sort music? Like, how do you decide what is more valuable and what is less valuable? How do you create a system whereby the cream floats to the top, which is what Tunable is really.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so what kind? Because obviously, right now you're in the prototype phase, and usually like apps would be built on like InVision, but you use Marvel.
Yeah,
Okay, I
that's
imagine
correct.
it's no difference to InVision. How did you find using it for the first time?
Yeah. Marvel's been really good actually. A really good bit of kit. It links in with Sketch. So Sketch has actually been my ultimate lifesaver for me because I'm sort of the computer geek that never was. Although I am a considerable computer geek really. But I used Photoshop as a kid, but then Sketch. It's almost like Photoshop that has been designed not by programmers or by coders. It's like a really intuitive, to me anyway. It's like a really intuitive Photoshop, and so that enabled me to do lots of the wireframes and designs for the web version of Tunable, which kept me pretty busy because without that I would have found it hard to progress sort of conceptually, and that links in with Marvel, so that's been really really helpful as a tool,
No, I can
definitely.
imagine, mate. And from there, so obviously with so what would you say to anyone out there who's looking to start their own app? What are the processes you've gone through to enable yourself to get there? I suppose did you just go straight onto Sketch and just start designing yourself? Did you look around in the market first for anyone else that might be able to do it either quicker or more efficiently, or what was the process?
Okay, yeah. Well, firstly, so a caveat in that I feel like I'm not there yet, but I feel like
No, of
I've
course.
through my journey, I feel like I'm quite aware of a lot of the pitfalls, and things that I could have done differently. And yeah, I would say it's something that I had drummed into me, or through various friends I've had drummed into me, to just to just start, as cliched as that is, and hard to pull off, um, but to share your idea as well, not to be afraid of someone stealing it, because I spent years, literally, well, yeah, probably 2 or 3 years, just keeping the whole thing under wraps, just for fear of it being like stolen by someone, or this strange sort of paranoia. And then you eventually realize that everyone's so busy fighting their own battles and trying to promote their own things that no one really has the time or inclination to do that stuff. And if they do, then then so be it. You just have to have faith in the universe and go for it. So I would say, starting off by, if you can build a wireframe, if you can build a functional UX that flows and works, you don't have to know any of the coding. That's half the battle. If you can do that, then you can hand that off to a developer, and if there's some logic behind it, then they should make short work of turning that into a platform, which is where I am at the moment.
Which is
It took
awesome.
me a long, yeah, it is awesome. Um, so yeah, I would say get yourself onto Sketch and just start mucking around.
And is it quite? Would you say it's quite easy to use for a newbie,
Yeah,
for instance?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the only downside is I don't believe they have an app for PC, which was actually was kind of a bit of a, well, not a problem, but it was an obstacle for me. I mean, there was a friend of mine who I was really keen to work with, and at the time he was not working on Mac OS, and so there was just that he, we couldn't share the files, and so that was a relationship that never came to anything. But it's a really good bit of kit, a really good bit of software, and very intuitive. Yeah, you
Excellent.
can spend many an hour on that.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially if well, you said you're obsessed with efficiency, but even if you've got a slight element of
Mm.
perfectionism to your life, then yeah, you could probably spend a huge amount of time. And did you do any of the did you do any of the layout by hand first prior to doing it on Sketch? You just go straight into Sketch.
Yeah, I did a mixture. I've got I think I started off with doing pets and pencil drawings. I think I started off mocking stuff up actually just on Photoshop, but didn't get very far with that. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to spend the whatever it was, $60 or something to dive in and get Sketch. And then there wasn't really much looking back. But yeah, I think a mixture of the two of them actually helps. You go back and forth between the paper and the screen. Yeah.
No, it's good. And so when was most of this taking place? When were you doing most of the designs for Tunable?
So I did an awful lot of it on the bus between Norwich and London. Actually, I have to say, so living up in, or well, yeah, living in Norfolk. So my parents live in Norfolk, and that's where I'm living at the moment. And when I'm not, or when I wasn't working on boats, I would come home to Norfolk. But all of my friends live and socialise in London, more or less. I still have a few friends up here, luckily. So I would spend a lot of time traveling between the two locations and usually on the old megabus. So I would find that was actually a pretty good time uh, a time where you wouldn't get distracted because I'd have a laptop that was not connected to the internet, which if I can like narrow down distractions in my life, that's a very useful thing for me.
Oh yeah, and you can never
Um,
trust like National Express internet or anything like that.
yeah,
That was
exactly,
dreadful.
exactly. So that was a good that was a useful time to do that, and I think that would have probably been 2 3 years ago. I don't know. It gets a bit murky actually. Yeah, I went to live in Romania a couple of years ago, more or less to work on Tunable, and it was before that. So yeah, it was been 2015, 2016.
Awesome.
Um, hmm.
That's cool. And so right now you're in the process of finding a developer, or you've already found one?
No, well, yes and no. Yes, I'm in the process of finding a developer. No, I haven't found one. I mean, I've been in contact with different development teams. I mean, the dream really would be to find a CTO who I can like partner with in whatever way and whatever sort of equity basis, um, and and then go from there. Because whilst I could sort of be a product owner and I would be able to sort of babysit a dev team relatively well, I wouldn't be able to do it anywhere near as well as a CTO who actually has that experience. And I really want to find someone to, I don't know, someone to curb my perfectionism in some respects. Like I've just been banging this idea back and forth in my head for like 5 years. And what I'm really lacking is just the almost the sort of confidence or there's too many ways to skin this cat and I've got all of the ways in my head. So I just need someone to tell me, okay, no, you're not allowed to do X, Y, or Z. You have to get a programming team from this country. You can't spend more than this. I just need a load of constraints sort of put on me and then I'd probably find a way. But when there's just, I think it's, the term is analysis paralysis or something along those lines where you just can't can't move forward for fear of I don't know making the wrong step or something. But having someone else to help make those decisions with, and then I can say, do you think that's a good idea? I think that's a good idea. Yeah, we both. All right, great. Let's go forward and do that.
Certainly, and then obviously
Um,
balance it and weigh it up against whether it's actually a doable idea from a development point of view as well. Is this achievable?
yeah,
Is this going to be achievable within the time constraints we have? Excellent. How long is it actually going to take to achieve? Brilliant. Okay, cool. That does always help. And it
absolutely.
also goes back to a little bit your fear with regards to sharing the idea for fear of obviously someone stealing it, which is something that I think I've been crippled by in the past. You know, you have these wild ideas. I think I've had a couple of blockchain based ideas. Actually, talking of blockchain, there's you've heard of I think it's Value X do something quite similar to what you're proposing. It's a blockchain based in indie music stock market, something like that. Not sure how it works, but it looks just insane. And as soon as you start throwing blockchain about, suddenly gets people's attention.
Oh
No one
yeah,
fully
yeah.
understands. No one without any without any code experience, or well, even I definitely struggle with it. Fully understands DLT at the end of the day, but I've had a couple of wild ideas. What's that food sharing scheme? There's that food sharing scheme whereby rather than just binning your leftovers, because the grand majority of food waste comes from your own cupboard. There's a food up. It's not Olo. That's taxis, Rowan. What's it called? Oh, it's called Omo or something odd. It was all
Oh,
over the double deckers in London. I can't remember for the life
oh
of me.
right.
Yeah,
I like the
it's
sound of that because food waste is, yeah, it's close to my heart.
No, for sure, man. I think
Yeah,
it is close
yeah.
to everyone's. And I had a very similar idea about a year ago, and I was thinking, shit, this could be an amazing blockchain based idea. Then obviously someone's gone
Hmm.
along and done it. I didn't think about sharing it with anyone. I had another idea even further back as well, something to do with something to do with sharing manufacture. I think it was trying to. Oh yeah, that was it. I think it was trying to eliminate wholesalers from the equation. Try to provide direct to consumer manufactured products, almost like a Deliveroo from manufacturers. I can't remember how it was going to work, but it was supposed to be all
Okay.
blockchain based. And again, I'd had it all extensively written out, and I was ready to rock and roll, and I never proceeded for fear of obviously looking out, going to the market. I was going to start designing wireframes and everything. I just like, oh god, what's holding me back here? What's holding me back? And it's I think that's an issue that a lot of entrepreneurs come up against. So do you feel that you still struggle with that idea sharing phase, or is that something that you think is pacified?
So I think I've largely got over the idea sharing thing. I mean, I think the way I look at it now, I've had a few existential crises in the intervening period between me starting Tunable and now. So I mean, my whole outlook has changed in some ways. And so now, to be honest, I guess I try and focus more on just managing my environment, being positive. I don't know, meditating and praying when I see fit, and then sort of having some faith and seeing what happens, and what will be will be. One thing that I have, um, it's kind of divisive actually, in the community, in the sort of like, if you've heard of the law of attraction, you might have heard of
Of
that. It's a
course.
sort of, yeah. So I actually I decided not to make Tunable, or the success of Tunable, contingent upon my happiness. Um, so some people might say, okay, you need to concentrate on that, and that's all you concentrate on, and then it comes true, which I think could well be the case. But then equally, I don't think it's wise to place your happiness in like material realms. And at the end of the day, whatever good I think Tunable could do, and I have some pretty grandiose visions for it, like redistributing income on grand scales, and helping the artistic community and changing the world. But it
I
is
love it.
still it's a material construct, and I'm going to die someday, and then there are other things that are gonna take over. So um, yeah, the fear of sharing the idea is gone, but there's still, yeah, I don't know. There's some latent fear there somewhere, but I'm working on it.
It's primordial, mate, and it's interesting the not being too attached to an idea for your own happiness' sake is very important. And I think we often put far too much pressure on ourselves, especially during these ventures. And obviously, if you end up setting yourself up with certain milestones and one or two end up being unsuccessful, a lot of people, and I've definitely been liable to this, have ended up beating themselves up. And I think in essence, you ended up beating yourself up over something. You can actually demotivate yourself, for lack of a better term, and end up disassociating yourself from the importance of the project, and even just losing interest altogether.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It can become a a sort of negative feedback loop.
Yeah, a burden
So
almost.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
I've definitely found like even doing my podcast, like you have a couple of days when you just don't fancy it. you know,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, like yesterday, I just kind of I closed my laptop about midday and I just chilled out for the rest of the afternoon, and I was fine with that. And I got on this morning, wasn't as quick to do as many things as I was expecting to do, but you know what? It's fine because I'm still sat at my desk. I'm still doing this. I'm still okay with it, and I'm not going to look back and be like, oh, I should have done it this way. I should have done that. I should be here now. Because if I'm not here now, then I'm not as much of a success as I thought I was going to be. Because again,
yeah,
it's too much. It becomes a burden. It's sad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's striking a balance between setting goals and reaching them, and just like drifting without any goals. Obviously, there's a balance to be struck,
There
but it's
is, there
yeah,
is, because
too
you
far
can
either way is not healthy.
exactly. Well, it's a little bit like as you were mentioning your vision. You still have your vision, and you still are essentially working towards it. You don't necessarily
Hmm.
have to be forcing yourself to work towards it every day. It's just as long as it's there in the foreground,
Yeah, yeah.
then
I'm just passively manifesting it. It'll come to me. I'm not sure. It'll arrive. It'll arrive via FedEx someday.
hopefully
Tunable by
we'll
FedEx.
manifest that £1 million
Yes.
check as well, and then you can put that towards solar cruising.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, baby. And I was going to ask as well. So right now, the process for you finding a developer,
Hmm.
what are the parameters that you're basing finding a developer on? Is there something specific you're looking for?
Well, again, I guess there's many ways to skin the cat, and I'm open to all of them. I mean, I've looked at, in some ways, yeah, the dream really would be to find a CTO, um, a chief technical officer who is into their music and is also capable technically, and who I get on with. Um, that would be the dream, really. Anything else is largely irrelevant. Um, in terms of other ways to progress, I had thought about finishing off the current landing page, getting some interest through founding artists, and privately crowdfunding the development, and then engaging a remote dev team. I controversially, I want to go to India. I want to get Tunable developed in India, partly because everyone says it can't be done, and partly because I really want to go to India. I think it's about 50-50. It's like the antagonist in me. Everyone says like building software is hard enough as it is, Ed. Don't give yourself extra like communication problems by getting it built in a different time zone with, yeah, I don't know, adding to potential complications. But I don't know.
Hey, Bangalore,
I
Silicon
just,
Valley of India.
yeah. And you know what? I mean, just the price differences are very hard to ignore.
Staggering.
I do see it can be a trap in that you get what you pay for. But I think that my situation is relatively unique in that I'm the product owner in a true sense, and I understand what I want to have built from the ground up. I understand all the logic behind it. I understand all the mathematical logic behind it. I don't understand how to put that into JavaScript, but I do understand the essence of it. So if I was there, it would probably be a question of me going to India and literally babysitting this dev team. And if I did that, I think I could have a platform built for comfortably for 50 grand in terms of like dev costs. I've got a company who reckon they'll do it for 12K with a little bit of equity. Um, which I mean, you know, I tell people what I want to have done, and some people would tell me it'll cost like yeah tens of thousands, some people hundreds of thousands, some people would say it costs millions. So it's really you're getting into the sort of dark arts of valuations again. Um, yeah,
So India, that would be interesting.
yes, yeah. Two birds with one stone.
Yeah, man.
I need to head east. I've spent some time in Thailand, which I enjoyed a lot, and yeah, India I think can be intriguing.
No, it definitely is. I 'cause my mum's from Kolkata, so I had the fortune
Ah,
fortune of being able to go every Christmas see my grandparents up until I was 18. But obviously, when you're a kid and you're going with your family, it's a hell of a lot different going to a place when you're by yourself or with your mates or something like that. Because obviously, you don't really share the same interests, nor do you want to share the same interests. So I haven't had the opportunity to go back since then. So it would be quite a superb experience to just go and spend a month there and just travel around as far as I can possibly go. It's just be amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I did spend 9 months out of Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and a month in Bangkok. I got back last May actually, and
Oh, right.
yeah, it was quite fun. It was really beautiful. I'm not sure if you've gone to Vietnam yet, but I definitely recommend it.
No.
Get over, do the northern motorbike loop. I did one around this place called Ha Giang, and it's just the most incredible scenery I've ever witnessed. Honest to God, man, you'd love it. You know, just from the conversation we've had today, man, like you definitely like it. So anyway, before we get into scenery and stuff, which isn't really the purpose of the call,
Yeah.
so essentially, once you find your dev team, which presumably your budget's between about 10 to 50, which should be that's moderately low cost for what you're looking at. The next
Hmm.
stage, I guess you were saying that you'd build a landing page to attract the artists first prior to crowdfunding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, part of me, I believe that I've conceived of this like almost perfect system for valuing digital media and all this stuff. But then there's this other part of me that goes, well, fuck it, you've got to make sure that other people are into it as well. And I want it to be managed, or I want it to be a platform for artists, sort of owned by artists. So in a dream world, I'm trying to create like Plato's Republic in some sort of strange software format, some sort of weird online democratic platform. So this is probably all a bit too much for an MVP, to be honest with you. Um, so yeah, there's different ways for me to sort of to go about it. Um, um, yeah, I don't know.
No. I mean, it's still early days, mate, and it does sound like a fantastic project. I think one thing I definitely want to touch upon, obviously, is obviously finding your artist or creative, finding your artist, and then you'll be reaching out to the larger public for it. But I suppose it's too early to talk about marketing. So I guess what I'd like to really touch upon is your vision formation. You've got this real grand vision, and I suppose for a lot of people, one thing that's quite difficult is a lot of people want to start a business, and I like to think of entrepreneurs as and yes, don't get me wrong, there's a huge amount of middle ground between these, but you've either got your true visionaries who believe in a project and they really want to complete something, or you've got the serial entrepreneur who's happy to just start a business, boom, sell, start a business, boom, sell. Oh look, I'm the board of trustees, I'm on another board of trustees. In essence, from the former's point of view, how have you been able to form your vision, and what would you say is the process or the steps that one could take to enable themselves to have a more formed one?
In terms of what I suppose starting out with something other than the desire just to make money is potentially useful, because I mean, I guess that's what we need a little bit more of in the world. So start with the problem. It's the cliched thing of start out with something that needs a problem that's crying out to be solved, and then go from there. Yeah, I don't have any particular. It was more, to be honest, when I was sort of developing Tunable, it all sort of it all seemed a bit like revelatory to me. I remember it just over over the course of a few days. Just I don't know. I was just sort of like I was really hyperactive, or I just seemed like I just really wanted to get all this ideas down on paper, or not on paper, onto. I think I was using Keynote, Apple's PowerPoint equivalent, and I've still got a bunch of these like PowerPoint presentations that just look like they were put together by someone who's like drunk 5 liters of coffee and it's just like desperately trying to wax lyrical about
Idea
methods
splattering.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. You've got to find your own different ways. I would say, as disappointing as an answer as that may be,
No, mate.
there's
Look, you said it was
no real
revelatory,
magical
which
key.
is no, but you said it was revelatory, which is awesome, and I think that's where all the best ideas come from. Because this is a superb idea. I mean, did you have you? I mean, once you actually had the idea, did you look at competition and see if there was anything else like there on the market?
Yeah, 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 yeah. In fact, every now and again, I will find a new company or something, and I will search, and I'll load up their homepage, and I will shit myself for like 1 minute, 2 minutes until I realize, like thinking that it's exactly the same thing, and then I realize, oh no, no, it's okay. It's just a similar, it's just the same market, similar idea. And I think that's the other thing. There's space
Of
for
course, there is.
more than one company. And I mean, in an ideal world, I believe in cooperation, not competition. I would just, I don't know, phone up Alex Leung at SoundCloud and be like, look, mate, got something that can save your ailing company. This is here's what we're going to do. But I'm just not sure that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that would work. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to get in touch with Alex Young. Really, I think I've potentially
LinkedIn,
sent him a message on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm
mate.
sure I sent him a message. Nothing. Um, so so yeah, it's. I did look at the competition, and actually, that was something that gave me a lot of confidence. Was looking at Bandcamp in particular. So, for those of you who aren't, or people who aren't familiar with Bandcamp, they are a streaming platform. I mean, I wouldn't say they're a streaming platform so much as streaming is part of what they do, but they're an online music vendor. And they have an option whereby users can, or the artist rather, can make it a pay what you want sort of price. So they don't set a price, and then the user just chooses to pay what they want. And then the data surrounding all of that and the amounts that users have chosen to pay is really, really encouraging. I mean, they've had numerous like £1,000 purchases for albums. So we're talking digital albums. So the person's not even getting anything in return, and then they're just because they want to presumably help this particular artist and really love this music, they're paying huge amounts of money. And I think it's something in the 40% of purchases are above the minimum amount. So often an artist will set, okay, the minimum cost for this artist for this album is £5, then people might pay £6, £7. And so that's what that encouraged me a lot, thinking, okay, if this is what people are willing to pay when they're not getting any recognition, if you can then leverage that and create a social network whereby everything is transparent and everyone can see what everyone else has paid, then you get this sort of, I call it like the just giving effect, perhaps, where, you know, everyone wants to be seen to be the generous guy that is given the most money to someone who's raising some money. So if you can do that and you're capitalizing upon people wanting to be connected to their favorite artists as well, then I think you'd really start to see just ridiculous amounts of money. I think if you got people uh, like using the app while they're a little bit drunk, people would be spending crazy amounts of money for songs and any other digital media that can be consumed through a phone or a computer.
No, indeed,
Um,
and it is very transparent, especially going for the kind of stock market route as well, because at the end of the
mm,
day, the valuation is purely based on consumer perception.
yeah, exactly. It's the purest. So the idea is really to create, like I say, it's to value independent art. So it's to create a system whereby you can look up a particular song, and then you can say, okay, well, according to the market, that song is worth X, and that X would be just the average, the mean average of everything that's been paid for it. Then you could look up what it's worth in different countries and different demographics, all sorts of things. And it's really like you're sort of juicing the media, juicing the music for all that it's worth, which sounds hideously capitalistic in some ways. But the way I'd look at it really is that you're injecting money into the world of art in a purely honest fashion. So instead of having a system whereby
In a
artists might.
redistributory manner as well.
Absolutely. And instead of, the world of art and music and Hollywood and everything is probably fairly indisputably dark in some respects. And the notion of selling out is something that has been around for as long as the entertainment industry itself. And in a way, this would be something that means that there's less pressure for artists to sell out. I mean, they're sell you're it's a sort of potentially. I've thought it's potentially problematic in that it's this intersection of capitalism and art, but I see it as a good thing, really. I mean, I have nightmares of it all going horribly wrong and ending up like a monetized Facebook or something, and me knowing what social media has potentially, or the impact that it has had on our generations or on everyone that uses it, I don't think is necessarily all positive. And I'm very conscious of wanting Tunable to be a positive thing. And I don't want to just create this thing and make a shitload of money. Like I could make it without sounding too arrogant. I could make a shitload of money doing various different things. I want to do something that is good for humanity. And I think that's harder than it sounds. I think a lot of things that end up being bad, let's say, or being having negative impacts on the world, people don't set out for that to happen. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg necessarily set out to socially engineer like the world. And I don't know. It's complex. So that's some of my fears as well. trying to make this thing as utopic as possible. Maybe I'm just getting wrapped up in my own head a bit too much.
No, I like it, man. I like it. It's very inspirational, to be honest, man. But on that note, I think I'm going to ask you to do two more things for me, just so we come to the end. I know that obviously Tunable's not exactly a thing yet, but well on its way.
Yeah.
Often what I ask everyone to do for me as my guests, I ask them to pitch me their project or company.
Okay.
So it's about a 10 to 15 elevator pitch, excuse me, dying over here, 10 to 15 second elevator pitch. Let's hear it. Tunable.
Okay. So Tunable is a platform for giving value to independent art. It's a pay what you want system where users interact with artists. They pay whatever they want from a cent upwards. And in doing so, they're investing in the art that they're paying for, and they are creating an online stock market and creating valuations, and also creating your own digital creative footprint. So I could go onto Rowan's profile and I could see what you paid for everything, and I could see how much you like something. If there's a particular song that you're really into that not many of your friends are, you will promote that, and that will be obvious in your profile. So it's really a way of changing a paradigm of the way we transact music, from paying to consume for paying to associate. So you're paying to show your recognition to artists, show them how much you love their music, and then you're also getting rewarded in a cryptocurrency like fashion. But that's all too complicated for an MVP. So in a bid to keep costs low, we'll just go with the basics and then take it from there.
Sick, man. That was the longest elevator pitch.
Right. Oh, it's 15 seconds, wasn't it? Okay. Yeah.
No, it was fine.
You can see.
It was. I've got so many ideas right now. What do I do to squish them into a tiny box? Oh, yeah, that's not happening. But no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think in essence, it's a very inspiring, aspirational vision that you have, and it's a fantastic idea. And I really, really do hope that it succeeds and that you find the CTO that you're desperately searching for, preferably in India, so you can kill those two birds with one stone. And the last but not least thing I have to ask you to do is to take a selfie with me in the background on your screen, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's do this.
Cheers, man.
So hang on, do I turn around? Does this involve me turning around?
I think it might do. Excellent. Yeah, it would indeed. And then just have me in the background.
Let's do this.
Sweet, bro.
I'll probably unplug these. Will that work? Oh, gosh.
Oh. Yeah, I've made that considerably awkward for you.
No, it's fine. I will turn this around.
Yeah, it might be a better idea, actually.
There we go. That way you'll be in the light, and I'll be on this side.
I didn't expect this to be so much movement. Sorry, mate.
Hang on, is that what we're going for, or are we going for a selfie with both, like a photo with both of us on there?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get yourself in there and me in the screen, that'd be superb.
Okay, hang on. I'm not sure this. Or hang on, or just you mean a photo of the screen, or?
No, with you.
Yeah, with me.
Just like this, as we were doing. Yeah, as you've been doing.
No, let me stick a light on as well. Okay. There we go. All right. I think we got it.
Superb. Thanks, pal. Sorry about that.
It's quite.
You got to have your own weird ways of ending conversations.
Yeah,
I guess.
I like it. Like it a lot. Got a lot of time for things that are a little bit different.
Indeed. Wonderful. Well, Ed, mate, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah.
All right, we're just plugging back in. And yeah, mate, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to hear about your vision. As I said before, I really hope you find your Indian Indian CTOs. Do you have anything else to say to my one or two listeners out there before we end the session?
If you like the sound of anything that I've been talking about, then get in touch and just keep on doing what you're doing and be positive. And I think that's about it, really. Yeah.
I like that. And where can they go to just check out the prototype for Tunable?
So to tunable.com. So that's tune as in song, tuneable.com, or tunable.stream. I've been very lazy. Well, lazy is not the right word. I just have neglected social media entirely. I mean, my sister bullied me into making an Instagram page for it, which I've just not really done anything with. But I think now's the time. Now I will I'll give it a push and actually see where I can go with it. Tunable.com is probably the place to go.
Awesome. And thank you very much for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. Remember, come back to How to Start Up for some real-time advice.